The first trend in testing is the mix of applications being tested is changing. There is a growing demand for cloud-based testing services. With mobility, we see how mobile applications changes, for example, the business of a New York Times. In Europe, for example, banks are fiercely competing on being able to deliver a full and complete banking in a phone solution. A lot of the revenue now comes in through transactions that are done via mobile devices. The second trend is around testing as a discipline in IT. In the past, testing is an afterthought. Testing is viewed as a phase that you need to do to guarantee production quality. Now it's raised a level of maturity where people view testing as an end-to-end process to ensure application quality. In the area of tools, we are peeling deeper into the onion in terms of tools within the testing space. We have gone deeper from UI-based automation into the services layer in being able to automate services and interfaces, in virtualization also. If you look at testing from a service arrangement perspective, it is also evolving. In the past, providers are asked by companies to provide individual capacity or staff augmentation to do testing services. Nowadays, that has changed. Companies look for a provider who can be accountable and responsible for the end-to-end testing application. Testing now essentially addresses challenges that are both old and new. The challenge to deliver at a lower cost, faster speed, and higher quality has never changed, and that remains the same. And yet the environment is now made more complex with disruptive innovation. You're now looking at cloud-based applications. You're looking at how you handle big data and how you test it. You're looking at mobility. So this causes more complex challenges in the testing industry. Now, with all of these challenges, I think one thing is certain. The need for tools and innovation is absolute.
Sharing some experience, some advice from my experience. So if you are a programmer, trust guys, testers here are not just to find problems, so don't hate them, right? Their responsibility is to basically capture, find issues before your customers get to know about it. It's just like you can't expect a doctor to say, not to find problems when you don't do best practices, right? So if you are just a problem finder, of course people will hate you. So imagine you go to the doctor and the doctor tells you only the problems, doesn't give you the medication, right? That doesn't work. So you need to be a solution finder, not just a problem finder. Testing is something that's done at the lay, it's done by the testers, but quality is a team sport, right? It involves everyone, right from the stakeholders to business analysts to developers, testers, and people in the operations. So understanding this, we take a very holistic approach. We ensure, we want to help everybody in the team, to play, to have a due diligence in whatever they create.
We know that as developers, testing is part of the process. Whether it's UAT, SIT, integration testing, this is all part of what we have to do to ensure that for mobile, for example, we get 5-star releases. Make sure we don't get the no star on the Android App Store or the iOS Apple Store. We have to make sure that everything we release gets out in a good way, and we can get good reviews, and hopefully we get this feedback loop going with our people using the application so that they can help us make it better. So right now, the trend that we're seeing is that people want to develop more for the mobile and not just for desktop. So there's very few people who develop solely on desktop nowadays. They want to move towards the mobile development. Together with development comes the testing, of course. When you're doing any mobile development, you usually interact with third-party apps, Maybe your application needs to interact with PayPal, with Visa, with your bank, and maybe it has a database also needs to connect. You don't do testing just at the very end. The earlier you do testing, the better. So we want to simulate the behavior of these components by creating these virtual services. We're going to virtualize all these services from these different sources so that we can test earlier in your development lifecycle. Then as we get these available, maybe you've got some services which you have to pay for. Like to use this third-party service, I need to pay some money every time I use it. So I don't want to test it all the time. I want to test it maybe only once a month or once a week. So instead of that, we can virtualize these kinds of services. Well, let's say Christmas time comes. Can you predict if your website, if you're a commerce website, for example, can you predict that your website will be able to handle the load? Can it handle 100 users, 200, 500, 1,000 users at any given moment? So that's when we do performance testing. We make sure that different kinds of users, maybe some of them are checking their balance, some of them are ordering, some of them are just browsing your website. Can your website handle this? That's the root of performance testing. And of course, the goal of it is to get bottleneck analysis, to figure out where in your source code do the problems occur.
So from a perspective of the one making it, you make a program that will use the app. So the procedure is you write the test program, then you run the test program, and out comes the report. All the test cases are there, passed or failed. That's UI automation. Because with the benefit there is, of course, instead of taking hours for a full run through of the app, it will be done in minutes. Plus, it's easily repeated for every release. You don't have to have all that pain of late night, overtime, over the weekend, testing and testing and testing. You just run the program and it will give you your test results. It's great. But then the problem here is our world is difficult. When we make these test programs now, we need to make these test programs that will work on all these platforms, and they all have their different ways.
I would like to ask, because we are mostly doing manual testing in our company and we are using JavaScript, so which of those test suite is best suited for us to have it automated or semi-automated? We are using JavaScript and mostly doing manual testing.
I mean, manual testing is something like, you cannot take it off, right? So manual testing will continue to exist, right? There are certain things that you cannot automate. It could be for various reasons. The technology not supported, or in this case, you mentioned the technology, but there could be other factors as well. So manual testing will definitely be there. The semi-automation helps the manual testing to simplify the manual testing efforts, right? So it's still manual testing, but you're simplifying. So to me, it's the same, right? The automation comes is like the returns comes is when you want to do a full set of regression testing over a period of time, right? So it's something that you have to repeat it over and over again. That the automation testing would be would add more value, I would say. So if your question is like semi-automate, try to automate as much as you can, right? For that you cannot automate, you always go back to the semi-automation side.
To me, when you go into tooling and automation, it's really about a business case, right? You look at what your need is, you evaluate. There are open source tools out there. It takes a good technical person to assess the tools, but it's not just really about the tool. It's assessing how the tool fits into your organization, what's the need you're trying to address, how often are you going to use the automation. So at the end of the day, to me, every automation, whether expensive tools or open source tools, it has to be addressed as a business case.
Automation is something that you should go for. I mean, I like what Raj said, not everything can be automated. But then those things that you will save a lot of effort, plus it's a little bit boring to keep testing the same things over and over, so it will increase the morale of the testers, being able to automate things that are repetitive, plus it increases the quality of the testing as well. And now as for which tool, we all have our opinions on that. And you will still need to make your own assessment based on your technical requirements.
How do you integrate your testing with the agile development?
So Agile, when you're implementing Agile, it's a totally different approach, right? First, if you look at the traditional waterfall way, you can probably segregate what the developers' roles are and then what the testers' roles are. In Agile, they're all mixed. Even the profile of people implementing Agile, you need technical testers, you need developers who can understand user stories. So I would say not all the standard tools are fit for Agile, and that's why there are specific tools, new entrants in the market actually, that are looking at addressing Agile testing. When you're doing Agile testing, the tools are generally less rigorous. The tools support also the iterative way of doing things, so it's different, and you need to have a tool that is tailored to support Agile testing.
We're finding it challenging to start automating testing even before the apps are created. Yeah. Is that possible?
In reality, automation is hard when you're just building an application, right? Typically, you look at a number of factors that can influence automation. The maturity of the application, the amount of change that you're putting in. If all of those things are not met, it may not make sense to automate quickly. Now, most of the automations I've seen happen when the application is on maintenance mode. If it's a new implementation, you can probably invest on automating a small portion of it, maybe 20 to 30%. Your most critical business scenarios that you know once you establish the functionality, that is stable and you will reuse that functionality and just build on it. So automate small in that area. But it's not easy if it's a new application, a new team and all.
So, if I have limited resources and I would like to start automation, and I have different types of tests, right? Regression, functional, UI testing, which would be the most logical to start on?
That's a hard question. I don't know if there's a one-size-fits-all approach to automation. I would probably, again, the consultant in me would say, I would look at first your needs overall, right? Well, I'm not sure if automation is the right answer. Maybe the answer may be defining your requirements better and writing your requirements better. So when requirements are done well, you can build well and you can do less testing. You can also invest in unit testing, for example. If you do a lot of good unit testing, then there's less need for application or integration tests. So I would look at a number of levers first before recommending automation.